first Delaware colony was Dutch and was massacred. The second colony was Swedish and proud. It was not massacred, but it had its troubles too. Holland as a nation no longer seemed interested in Delaware by 1633. They continued to trade in the territory, but did not attempt another major colony. They had settled the area we know as New York, and had christened it New Netherlands. New York City was at that time New Amsterdam. Some men of the Dutch West Indian Company felt that the Delaware territory should be colonized, that the tragic outcome of Zwanendale should not influence future settlers. One such dissatisfied Dutchman took his case to the Swedish court.
Your Majesty, I propose that a company of Sweden be organized to carry on colonization in the area of the South River.
Gustavus Adolphus, King of Sweden, liked the idea. In 1637, the first expedition of the Swedish South Company set out for the New World and the South, or Delaware River. Peter Minuit commanded the first group of Swedish settlers. Minuit had been with the Dutch, had been governor of New Amsterdam, and was responsible for the purchase of Manhattan from the Indians. But by 1637, he had shifted easily into the service of Sweden. Although the expedition was technically Swedish, the crews, soldiers, and settlers who went along were heavily sprinkled with Dutch citizens. The voyage began in winter and lasted 3 months. It was spring when they reached Delaware. After 3 cold months on the water, any land would look good to a traveler. To the Swedes, the spot where they first touched Delaware seemed so beautiful that they call it Paradise Point. Minuit and his Swedes explored inland, keeping a wary eye open for possible Dutch settlements. They established contact with the Mincas Indians and arranged to trade for furs with them. They also arranged to buy the land from the Indians. The Indians were quite accommodating in this way. They were willing to sell the land a dozen times to a dozen different nations. This time, it was to Sweden. They conveniently overlooked the fact that they had already sold it earlier to Holland.
I claim this land and this river in the name of the most illustrious and most mighty Princess, Christina, elected Queen of the Swedes.
The Swedish Queen Christina, like the English Lord Delaware, never saw her namesake colony. At the time her name was so used, she was just 11 years old, and her father had tried to raise her as a boy. She had problems of her own. Christina was never to take a great interest in her Delaware colony, but the Swedes, situated by the Christina River at Fort Christina, established the first lasting colony on Delaware soil. What kind of people were the Swedish settlers? Why did they elect to leave their own country to pioneer a frightening wilderness? Why would any people leave their homes to settle a new land? People leave their homes to settle new lands for a number of reasons. An overcrowded population, famine, or too few jobs, persecution because of religious or governmental beliefs, a sense of adventure and a longing for the unknown. Of these reasons, only the last could be applied to the Swedish settlers. Sweden was underpopulated, if anything. The resources of the country were largely untapped. Nobody was persecuted. And because of expensive European wars, it was impractical for Sweden to attempt an American colony. The colony would be weak at best, as indeed it was. The settlers did come, though not in great numbers. They were for the most part farmers and their families. They were healthy, strong people, used to hardships. They tackled the problem of building a new Sweden in America with spirit and endurance. And then there were the Finns. For some time, the Swedish government had been having its difficulties with its Finnish neighbors. Finland bordered Sweden, and for some years the wandering Finns had sifted into the Swedish forests, bringing their slashing, destructive axes and their wild spirits. The Swedes resented these people and their over-ready axes, and referred to them as the wasteful, forest-destroying Finns. The Finns also had a disturbing reputation for witchcraft, and the Swedes wanted nothing to do with the black magic of these invaders. When Fort Christina was established, Sweden was only too eager to export the Finnish nomads to the New World. In America, said the Swedes, the Finns could chop trees, kill animals, and practice sorcery as they pleased. And so, New Sweden was enlivened with the spice and witchcraft of the Finns. For 6 years, Delaware's Swedish colony drifted along, not accomplishing very much, content only to exist and try to keep in good health. Then, in 1643, New Sweden got a new governor, Lieutenant Colonel Johann Prince, Governor Prince of the icy eyes and the uncompromising jaw. Johann Prince, who made the ground sag with his 400 pounds. He was an impressive figure. And he had impressive plans.
We will have no violence towards either Dutch or these native Indians, but we will possess all this land from West Bank to East Bank, and from the Cape called May to the one called Inlopen. We will see to it that these Indians trade with no one but us, and if the Dutch object, so much the worse for them. The colony will be ruled by me, according to the laws of Sweden. And by the way, we shall also possess the whole of the river and the bay. I'm instructed to grow tobacco, cattle, sheep, and grapes. Sharpen your axes, Finns. We will cut and export timber. We will have many industries. Oh, yes, I've been told to raise silkworms.
Silkworms? Impossible. Ha! Crazy. Possible.
They never got around to the silkworms. But Prince carried out most of his plans with the determination and directness of a charging bull. Under Prince's guidance, Fort Christina began to shape into a permanent community. Fort Elfsburg was built to guard Delaware's eastern bank and the entrance to the river. Fort New Gutenberg, just below the future site of Philadelphia, was established as the seat of government and boasted the governor's mansion, Princehof, the finest dwelling in the Delaware region. Delaware was surrounded by newly raised Swedish fortifications. Dutch and Indians alike could hear the growing sounds of an empire building. Soon the Swedish monopolized the trading on the Delaware River, a low, hard blow to the Dutch, who had been there first. But at that time, the only Dutch left in the territory were the few inhabitants of Fort Nassau, and they had no wish to cross Johann Prince. Sweden was supreme in Delaware. Prince was pleased.
All is well.
Meanwhile, up in New Amsterdam, news of the pushy Swedes was spreading.
Before, the land was possessed by the Netherlands, but how is it now? The Swedes have it almost entirely under their dominion.
These Swedes insult our dignity. How long will we let them continue?
Prince was not worried.
Let them talk.
Besides, for all his pride and accomplishments, Prince had his own worries. Crops were poor in New Sweden. There were so few animals left that Prince was forced to trade for livestock with New Netherlands. People were dying. New Sweden was desperate for more settlers and supplies. When more settlers came, they left something to be desired. There were Finns, military convicts, game poachers, and unfaithful husbands, hardly the cream of Swedish society. And they increased New Sweden's population to number barely 100. And up in New Amsterdam, the clouds of irritation were thickening.
What does this man Prince think he is doing?
This is what I'm doing. I'm keeping the Dutch out of Swedish territory.
He might have succeeded. He might have kept the Dutch away permanently. But something happened. A new Dutch governor came to New Amsterdam. A man every bit as large, ambitious, and hard-headed as Johann Prince. Peter Stuyvesant, a giant with a wooden leg who was ready for a fight. The Dutch were coming back to Delaware, and they were coming armed. Prince gnashed his teeth and got fire in his eye. The conflict was about to happen. And it had all begun so peacefully, with a gentle little colony in honor of Christina.